I'm Mayk. Welcome to Battleground Politics. We're digging into the debate over transit funding and a budget in Harrisburg as SEPTA makes steep service cuts. The agency says it needs funding to make up a budget deficit. Lawmakers so far can't agree on how to get to a deal that would provide that. I talked to leaders from both parties and both chambers. A reminder that there is divided government in Harrisburg. Democrats control the House, Republicans control the Senate. Let's start with my conversation with Democratic House Speaker Joanna McClinton. So let me start with your constituents and what this is going to look like, because SEPTA runs through your area. What are you expecting these changes to look like in this area?
We have throughout the city 50,000 children out of our 200,000 school children that rely on transit to get to school, to get home, to get to an after-school activity, to get to a job. So in my district, in Delco, starts the 13 trolley, the 11 trolley, and then the 34 is right down from my house at 60th and Cobbs Creek. So people take the trolley to get into Center City, to get to University of Penn, to go work at the hospitals, to get to where they're going. They also take the 46 bus route to get to the Market Frankfurt L in my district, which for many years when I was a public defender, I would run for the bus, wait at the L, and I'd tell everybody I'll be at court in 10 minutes. Because you can see City Hall from 60th and Market. I'm going to be downtown in 10 minutes. Yeah, it's 5 stops, but I'm going to be there in 10 minutes. What we're going to see is a change in the pace, a change in the schedule, and all of this could be avoided if we can get back to the table and resolve this in Harrisburg ASAP.
Now, the House passed a transit funding and accountability bill. I think it was August 11th. The House hasn't been back in session yet. How do you see this playing out? Do you think there's any possibility that the House comes back to pass anything else on its own? Or do you really think the next time you're going to be back in Harrisburg as a body is when there is a deal that both chambers have agreed on?
Well, it's well overdue for a deal. The governor gave his budget proposal in February. We started moving budget bills in the springtime. We had a deadline of June 30th to do both the state budget and, of course, transit, because it's important not only in the Philadelphia region, but also to our colleagues, to our constituents out in Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, and so on and so forth. So we want to go back to session when there's a full compromise. We sent over measures, we sent over a budget, we sent transit, we passed it last session 4 separate times. Since we've been back this session now, we passed it again. And we, of course, included the Republican demands from our colleague right here in Philadelphia, Senator Pecosi, wants more accountability, wants more transparency. We included those measures hoping to reach compromise. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened yet, but we are prepared to return as soon as we get a deal.
You mentioned compromise. The governor talked about that the other day. He said that everybody's going to have to compromise. Are there things that you can point to that you can say House Democrats are willing to compromise on this?
Absolutely. The fact that every single time we've passed transit, it's been bipartisan. We're showing our Senate Republican friends the way. I get a lot of feedback that there's so many different Republicans that do not want to fund transit. Well, there are 23 Democrats who want to fund transit. You only need 26 votes to pass the bill. We have ours passed every time across the aisle. It's time for the Senate Republican leadership to go across the aisle to broker the deal with the Democrats and with the Republicans in their caucus who want to champion this, who say that they believe in it for their constituents to get it done. We've run out of excuses, and unfortunately, we're running out of time.
The Senate Republicans have included in their bill that they passed this fund, a transit trust fund, that they would. The idea is that they would take money out of that for 2 years to fund transit. SEPTA has said that that doesn't work for them. The Department of Transportation says that that doesn't work because that money is used for capital projects. Senate Republicans have sort of listed some numbers of what's in there, saying that there is $1 billion that is not allocated for capital projects right now. Is there $1 billion that could be used in some way from that fund, even temporarily?
Unfortunately not. And what we need is not a temporary fix. SEPTA didn't just get into this problem. Pittsburgh Regional Transit didn't get into this problem. It starts with the pandemic, when ridership started to drop, when our school children were going to school from laptops and Chromebooks at home. And because their income dropped for so many years, we needed to raise investment. And that is why as soon as we flipped the chamber at the end of 2022, we continued to pass measures to fund transit. We cannot have a temporary solution. We'll just find ourselves, Lauren, in this perpetual cycle of temporary solutions, quickly trying to patch a hole. We don't want to patch a hole. We literally want to fill it and ensure that this is sustainable investment that all of our transit systems, especially SEPTA, can rely on for the future. We can't keep grasping our breaths trying to figure out what's going to happen today or tomorrow.
And I know that there's concern about those capital projects, and including for safety improvements. Is there a way to backfill that money where you could take money out of it now, maybe to use it as a line of credit, for lack of a better term, but backfill that money to get it back in there for those capital projects and maybe come up with some sort of compromise?
We'd have to create new revenue, and that's something there has not been agreement on. When the Governor Josh Shapiro, gave his budget address in February, he gave a few ways we could raise revenue. He said we should regulate skill games. We should raise the minimum wage. We should legalize marijuana in the Commonwealth. We should make all these efforts in order to create new revenue so that we have the money to invest in our public schools and, of course, to fund our transit systems. We sent over most of those measures, and we have not seen action from the Senate Republicans yet. Nothing on the minimum wage bill, marijuana legalization. They actually voted it up immediately. My joke has been it went up in smokes because we sent it on a Monday before the week was out. They voted it up just to let it be. Nothing occurred. We've been waiting on them now for 2 years to do skill games. They said that they would do it, that they had a consensus. No bill has come about. So
can you start that in the House? Could you start a skill game bill in the House?
But it's like so many other measures. At some point, we need to just have a compromise, a complete agreement, because we do all the heavy lifting just to see the barbells fall down and injure us and hurt our communities. What's happening now is hurting our communities. The Senate inaction is hurting our communities and is keeping people from being able to rely on a system that they've been able to use to get to work and to get to church and to get wherever they've got to go.
Let me ask you one more thing about that fund, because it's gotten a lot of attention. Where's the disconnect there? Because Senate Republicans are saying there's money there. SEPTA and you just said that's not the case. Where's the disconnect? Why are the numbers not the same?
Well, the numbers aren't the same because SEPTA has been straightforward all along. They need a real investment that they can rely on and that's sustainable. And even a temporary fix might seem appeasing for the moment, but we still haven't passed the state budget. It was due June 30th. I mean, all of these things, we have to make it make sense. We don't want to find ourselves in 30 days, okay, we're still going to have to make cuts. In 60 days, oh, we still don't have a budget. Because it doesn't just hurt our transit. It's also right now hurting our county agencies, our libraries, our folks that give out, support to those who are currently looking for housing, those who are homeless. They don't have the money that they need from Harrisburg. So we have so many balls in the air that we need to handle. But the truth of the matter is, we can do it. We just have to stay at the table until there's a compromise to finish the work so we can get ready for next year's budget. Before we know it, it'll be 2026 year's budget.
Yeah, there is a larger budget discussion going on. I know the transit and SEPTA has been a lot of the discussion, especially in this region and for good reason. But do you get to a point, especially with schools not getting money that they need from the budget, things like pre-K providers not getting the money that they need because there's no budget, do you get to a point where you say, hey, we got to get things moving and we got to do it without new money for transit? Or are you willing to say we are not moving forward without essentially saving SEPTA?
Essentially, we have to do all the above. We take those multiple choice questions and they say A, B, C, or D, all the above. We're to the point of all the above. We have to be able to manage all of our responsibilities because William Penn School District, which is in the community I serve in Delaware County, they've already had to borrow $10 million with interest, get ready for this, for $100,000 just to pay for the first 60 days of their expenses. This is not a joke when we talk about all of these challenges. But the good news is when we run for office, we run for office to solve problems. We don't run for office to run from problems. So I implore everyone who's watching to call our Senate Republicans. Let them know we can still solve all these problems.
Is there anything other than transit that you think is really holding things up, or is that the thing that there hasn't been an agreement on, and that holds everything up.
It's no easy way to talk about what the difficulty is. When we've heard from our Senate Republicans, we've only heard what they're not for. We're still waiting to hear what they're for. They finally sent us a budget just last week, but guess what? It has cuts to $2 billion. And under this Trump administration, costs have risen greatly. So we can't afford to pass a state budget that doesn't cover this year's expenses for all the agencies, for all the departments, for all the organizations that are counting on us to pay the bills and keep the lights on.
There is a proposal that is out there. I don't think it's been officially filed yet by one of your colleagues that would change the way tax revenue is handled and essentially break the state up into different categories, and areas would sort of, I think the idea is that they would keep the money that they collect. It's not really that simple, but that's the idea behind it. Is that something that you think is realistic and worth trying?
Well, one thing it does is give you perspective. If we had the perspective of our region giving Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, the state government, half of its revenue, I mean half, and we thought this one little area, just, 6 counties, keeping half of what we raised to handle all of our responsibilities, I bet we'd hear a different tune being sung right now by our friends in the Senate Republican majority. They'd be saying things like, hey, we need a few dollars in Indiana. We need this in Westmoreland. But we're glad to pay our fair share and to invest across the Commonwealth. We don't want to cause division, but what we do want to do is make sure there's perspective for how this works. This only works when we're able to work together.
The fact that this has been so difficult this year, and there have been other years when getting a budget is difficult. There was I think like a 6-month budget impasse during the Wolf administration. But the fact that this has been so difficult this year, especially when you have something like SEPTA at stake, is this a policy difference, or do you think that this is political? There is a re-election ahead, a re-election year ahead for the governor next year, for example.
This is Republicans politicizing everything. This is Republicans saying they want to make everything great again, including our country, but failing at the job. This is Republicans not standing up, being able to govern. Because regardless of where you live and who your constituents are, we come into that Capitol with the mindset of we've got to work together in order to not only make the sausage, but take care of our responsibilities. This is Republicans dropping the ball, saying they don't care about us. But we implore them in this hour, everything that's happened so far, let it be the past. But the end of this August, let's get back to Harrisburg and fix these problems, because we can do it together. It's unfortunate that it's drug on so long, but let that be in the past and let today be a fresh start where we can reach compromise to finish the work.
I'm just going to circle back to what we talked about in terms of the impact on kids, families, people getting to work, getting home, people getting to Eagles games, getting home. SEPTA has said this was all coming. The fact that there has not been a deal by now, is this just a failure of the larger legislature, Democrats, Republicans, the entire thing in Harrisburg? Is this a failure?
It's certainly someone getting a failing grade, but it's not House Democrats, because 4 times...
You don't take part of that responsibility?
Of course not, because we continue to move and continue to act. 4 times there was no answer from the Senate Republicans last session, 2023 and 2024, because as you stated, this is not new, and unfortunately it's not a surprise. The decreased income that SEPTA's had for quite a while has been predicted that there would be cuts, there would be challenges, and we've let them know, hey, this is a priority. Hey, this is a crisis. But what we've seen is Republicans time and time again in the Senate who run that caucus refuse to work with the Democrats in that caucus to get bipartisan bills done. We got a 1-seat majority, a humble 102. We make efforts every day to compromise, and most of our bills to this day come through with Republican votes because they're moderate, they're middle of the road, and they're with a mind to get things done. We have not seen that same responsibility with our Senate Republican friends, and that is why we are seeing a failure at this moment. But it is definitely not anything I own. My neighbors in West Philly, those in Delaware County, they know I'm fighting like hell every day. I'm not sleeping at night good because I know what's been happening, and it's unfortunate that they haven't stepped up. But as I said, Let it all be in the past. Let's step up now and let's stop playing the games, stop politicizing this, stop making this about 2026 and make it about what we need to do and what's in our control right now.
Speaker Joanna McClinton, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate your perspective. We'll stay in touch with you as all of this develops.
Thank you.
That was my interview with Democratic House Speaker Joanna McClinton. Here now is my conversation with Republican Senate President Pro Tem Kim Ward. Welcome, Senator Ward. Great to see you.
Nice to see you also.
So let's start with where things stand. Is there any movement? Do you feel like things have moved forward at all since the session that the Senate had?
No, I don't feel like there's been much forward motion. I think there are talks that are continuing. We'll see what happens. But, you know, at the end of all of this, as it's been, you know, it's made great media. For 2 weeks, we've been talking about the Mass Transit Trust Fund, which is positive because hardly anybody knew about it, including many of us. But at the end of the day, the governor can release those funds without legislation. He can release them today because they're held by PennDOT. They're under his administration. He can avert this shutdown right now in the next hour if he wants to. If he wants to.
So you're talking about this Transit Trust Fund, which is part of the Senate bill. That's where a lot of the money would come from to fund transit, including SEPTA. But SEPTA has said that doesn't work for them. They need that money for capital projects. So, you know, how is it funding SEPTA if you're using SEPTA money that it says it needs for something else?
So it's not SEPTA money, number one. It's the entire state's mass transit, public transit trust fund.
There's a silo of money, though, that is designated for SEPTA.
Sure. And they have given us projects. We asked for the projects. They have equaled, like, I don't know, a little over $1 billion for the next 5 years, or $1.8 billion for the next 5 years. There is a lot of that money that is not right now earmarked for anything. And that trust fund is for operational and capital projects, not just capital projects. But beyond that, in the next few years, they'll continue to have money put into that account, probably another $2 billion. You know what? I think what they say they want is a continuous flow of money. They don't want to use any of that on a permanent basis, and I get that on a permanent basis. But short term, you want to avert these shutdowns. That money's there. The governor can release it today, with or without the legislature.
So are you thinking that if they were to figure out a way to do this, and they've said that it doesn't work for them, but if there was some way to backfill the money or figure something out, would the legislature then go back to the drawing board to figure out a sustainable solution, which is what SEPTA says it needs?
Sure. And they could have sent us...
Why not just do it right now?
Right. They could have sent us back a compromise on what we sent to them. Well, we continue to look for that sustainable source. And one of those sustainable sources that does not raise Pennsylvanians' taxes is gaming. We are looking at it. It's on the table. It is, you know, for those that say that's not a sustainable source, I just ask them to please look and see what the casinos have done in Pennsylvania since they've been here. Every year, it's a very reliable source of money coming into the tax coffers.
What is taking so long, though, on skill games? You're talking about these machines. People might see them in corner stores or in bars. They're not currently regulated by the state. The governor did put that in his budget as a place to potentially get money. Both sides have been talking about it for a while. I've heard support for it on both sides. What's taking so long?
There is support for it on both sides. I think it would be good if the governor would just come out and lead on it and say, let's do this. Let's look at this. Let's do this. Because right now it's sitting on the table. There is some agreement, a pretty high percentage of agreement on most of the issues that pertains to gaming. There is still a dispute over the tax rate, which I think can be resolved. Just need to sit down at the table and work it out. That is a source that does not affect taxpayers. I know that the House Democrats have said over and over, we have sent them 5 bills. But every single bill would have resulted in a tax increase for Pennsylvanians. So if they want to send us a 6th bill that doesn't result in a general tax increase for sales or PIT or anything for all of Pennsylvania, we would probably be happy and interested in looking at that bill.
Well, the bill that the House sent over to the Senate regarding transit was the governor's proposal is to increase the slice of sales tax that transit gets. It doesn't increase the amount of sales tax that people pay. It increases the percentage that transit gets.
Of course.
What's wrong with that idea?
It leaves a hole in the general budget. It leaves a $300 million hole in the budget.
Could that be filled by the skill game revenue that you're talking about?
Or it can be filled, we can send skill games or, whatever we're going to call this bill, that can be a certain amount dedicated to transit and roads. And, we would be open to talking about all of these possibilities, but they deep-sixed the bill when we sent it over there a couple of weeks ago. They did not send back any kind of compromise. And now here we are. I haven't heard a peep from any of maybe the chairman, but the board members of SEPTA, who this really is their responsibility, are all quiet. No one has said a word. And where are they on this? Behind the scenes, some of them have said, oh, yes, this will work. But publicly, nothing. So I don't know if there are politics being played here. Well, I'm guessing that there probably are some politics being played here. But, if they let this, if the governor and the Democrats that serve Philadelphia stop these school children from getting to school, they do so at their own peril, and it's their decision because it doesn't need to be. As I said earlier, the governor can get a check out today to cover those costs.
As SEPTA has talked about the money that's in this fund, it says it's used for operation. SEPTA has said uses this fund for capital projects, including safety improvements. So if you take this money from there, are you willing to be responsible if an improvement is not made and there's a safety issue? Somebody gets hurt.
Why would we not include the safety issues with it? I think it's not going to be a bill in a silo where we say, the legislature or the governor says, here's your funding. Go in perpetuity, go. There will be accountability and safety measures that will be part of the bill. I just look at this crisis, and every day we're talking about this. We need to get something done, and the governor needs to lead on that. I'm not saying that, he's a bad guy. I'm saying he's not leading on the issue. We are coming up to a deadline, and, I encourage him, if there's no agreement in the next 2 to 3 days, to pull that money out of the Mass Transit Trust Fund and stop the shutdowns and continue taking our babies to school. I mean, using kids as pawns in this is just beyond, it's incomprehensible. And that is what they're doing right now. And, they like to say it's the whole state. The whole conversation for the budget has been nothing but this. And it's all about SEPTA. I don't hear so much from Pittsburgh. I don't hear from my own transit authority. It's all about SEPTA. And we don't do a budget, and we should not do a budget in a silo. We have to cover hospitals, nursing homes, social services, education. This is a big comprehensive budget. When you do it in pieces, I don't believe it works. So we need to get back to the drawing board with a complete budget, and this is part of it. But right now, this is all we're talking about. It has sucked every bit of air out of the budget negotiating room.
I know there's been some frustration about that. I've heard you express some frustration about that. But as you refer to yourself, kids are going to school, schedules are changing, families are having to try to figure out. Can you understand that there is some frustration and some urgency for them in saying, hey, to all the lawmakers, can you figure something out?
Absolutely. And so far, we haven't figured everything out. We have ideas at the table, but they haven't figured it out. So I do think at this late hour, the governor needs to come in. He needs to take some of the money from that trust fund and make sure that SEPTA doesn't stop taking our kids to school.
Again, SEPTA has said that plan doesn't work for them. And they've said they need that money for other things. You talked about sort of playing politics here. And I wanted to ask you about this because we are heading into, nothing happens, as you know, nothing happens in a vacuum in the political world, not in Harrisburg, not in Washington. We are heading into an election year, a potential re-election campaign for Governor Shapiro's. The treasurer, Stacey Garrity, just announced her run for governor against him. Is this about politics? Do you want the governor to look bad?
No, this isn't about making the governor look bad. Because as I said, the governor can stop this. He won't look bad if he stops this. It's not about making him look bad. It's about protecting taxpayers' wallets. I mean, the House sends us bills, and every single bill will result, maybe not this year, but maybe this year, or next year, for sure, the year after, it will result in a tax increase. Because when I talk about the whole budget, let's talk about Medicaid. We have an additional $2 billion commitment from the state this year to cover Medicaid. There is not money falling off of trees here in Pennsylvania. The governor did his budget 6 months ago. It was $4.6 billion more dollars than we had in revenue. And the revenue that he used was from recreational marijuana, which of course is not legal. And he did not include the $2 billion additional money for Medicaid. So he put out a wish list, but it wasn't a real budget. It was a real tough place to start because it didn't have real funding and it didn't include things that we are committed to cover. Big things, $2 billion it didn't include, $2 billion.
What do you think a deal ends up looking like?
I wish I could tell you. I can't. Every day there's, well, not every day, but, every few days there's some papers moving back and forth, but I can't tell you what the final papers will look like.
Are you hearing any concerns from your own constituents? As you pointed out, there's a larger budget that's very late at this point that is more than transit. It involves education money that's not going out. You've got all kinds of funds that are not flowing from Harrisburg the way they should be at this time of year. Are you hearing from your own constituents a frustration that there is not a deal?
I have not. I can't say that I have been bombarded with calls at all. I think we were just discussing this, some of the legislators the other day. Why aren't we getting bombarded? And I think that they're just getting used to it, right? We're late almost every year. They know their funding's going to come. I can't figure out any other explanation of why the only thing that we're talking about, that is, we're talking about the other things, but the only thing that right now has everybody's attention is SEPTA. And can I add something?
Yeah. We
love Philadelphia. It's a great city. It's one of our, one of the things we can be very proud of. So this isn't about Philadelphia. This is about the transit authority there. It's not about the city. And I know some have said this is Philadelphia versus it's not. We love Philadelphia. I just wanted to add that.
That also brings up something else that's been out there in Harrisburg recently, a proposal from a state representative that would change the way funding is handled, change the way the taxes that are collected are sort of distributed across Pennsylvania, and it would create different categories. And essentially, each area would sort of keep what they take in or something to that effect. What do you think of that idea? Do you think that is something that is workable?
So I haven't really thought much about the idea because it's not something that will ultimately happen. We're busy thinking about things that actually have to get done, like covering Medicaid, covering education, covering our nursing homes and our hospitals. And I know the basis of, I don't know the person who did it, was that we pay most of the taxes. But you also, in that city, take a lot of tax dollars, right? How do they think they get their lights? They get it from coal. They get it from gas. What percentage of the education dollars goes there when you have $36,000 per student? What percentage of our education dollars end up there? So You know, it's not a real bill. It's just a bill. It sounds like somebody put out because they were frustrated.
Okay. All right. Senator Kim Ward, President Pro Tem of the Senate here in Pennsylvania, we really appreciate your time and for giving us some insight into what's happening in your caucus. Let's stay in touch as this process plays out, and we'll see what happens for Pennsylvania.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
After those interviews on Thursday, I spoke with SEPTA's general manager Friday, again about that transit fund. He said he's going through the clarifications Republicans have sent, and he says he supposes all options are being considered.
Taking from one pot to give to the other is not a sustainable solution. It could be a quick fix, I suppose, but that's for them to decide. But we need to focus on the moment, and the moment right now is on service.
That does it for this episode of Battleground Politics. You can find more of my interviews on NBC10.com, the NBC10 app, our NBC Philadelphia YouTube page, or wherever you get your podcasts.